People are wonderful. Remind ourselves all the time.
I guess when she gives us the high sign, we'll be.
All right, I guess we're ready. You have the seat of honor right here in the middle.
Go ahead and flip that switch. I believe you got it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, good evening. Thank you for being here again for our August Conversations. We called the Tennessee Prison Outreach Ministry, and we wanted them to be a part of our discussion tonight about their ministry and about what is available through their ministry. And so we have Tommy Gore with us tonight. He's subbing for the director who's not able to be with us, and we're thankful that Tommy was ready to go. He's a preacher, so he can start talking at a drop of a hat, so no problems. He's a longtime minister for Churches of Christ. He and his wife Vicki did 7 years of mission work in New Zealand and has worked with churches in Tennessee and Texas, and we talked about that a little bit earlier. For the last 5 years, he has worked with the Tennessee Prison Outreach Ministry. And so we're going to hear a little bit more about what is involved with this ministry. Tommy, thank you for being with us tonight.
Join me in welcoming Tommy to our midst tonight. So tell us a little bit about what your role is. It's unfortunate that Thomas Snow couldn't be here, but we got a substitute Tommy. They wanted to substitute me.
We thought about kicking Steve out of here for Tommy Reese.
Tommy,
it would have been amazing.
But you can call me Tommy. There's some of these guys mix me up and call me Tommy at times anyway, so that's okay. But no, tell us a little bit about your role with Tennessee Prison Outreach Ministry.
Well, I sort of help Thomas Snow, our director, with fundraising and communication and making presentations to churches and things like that. So I edit the newsletter, and then, I'm involved on a volunteer basis with some of the mentoring that goes on. So that's my hands-on part of the ministry, but otherwise I'm doing the things necessary to sort of support the ministry and be involved in that.
And you live in the great and famous town of Columbia, Tennessee, right? Which
Absolutely.
is just south of Nashville. I've heard there's some really great people that have come out of Columbia. I just hear that. But, of course, James K. Polk, our 11th president, is one of them. There's others as well.
Right.
I know you worship with the Graymere congregation. We're familiar with Graymere and have had actually speakers from there in the past here. So we're glad that you're a part of that good congregation. And being in Columbia, I guess you do most of your work in Nashville, in the
Correct.
Nashville prison.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Good.
Which Columbia is basically just a suburb of Nashville these days, right? I mean,
Well, Nashville's kind of a suburb of Columbia. It's the way we always thought of it when I was growing up. Yeah. So,
Muletown, Music City.
Muletown, Music City. That's right. There you go.
Tell us a little bit about how this ministry got started. There's usually a story with these kind of things, and I know Thomas probably had a personal connection to that story, but we're excited to hear from you about how this got off the ground.
Well, by chance, I have a connection with the beginning. I grew up at the Madison Church, and when I was a teenager, there was a couple that just started volunteering to go to the metro jails and visit with people and teach them and baptize. And as a teenager, I was somebody they recruited to go take communion to the people that they had baptized behind the bars. So that was my first sort of taste of this environment. And the rest of my time, I've been a minister, and I would casually have occasion to be in certain prison facilities, but I always came away feeling like I really wish I knew how to serve these people better, and I've learned a lot in the last 5 years of what it really takes, especially to help someone who's coming out of incarceration to be successful as they return to the community. So at any rate, the story for TPOM is that, and forgive me if I use that strange abbreviation, but after you've said Tennessee Prison Outreach Ministry for the 100th time, you look for ways to abbreviate, So TPOM is the way we talk about ourselves. But for a long time, TPOM was a behind the bars ministry, and so taught the gospel, used volunteers to do Bible studies and other things involved in prison ministry. Even went and held prison ministry workshops in other places around the country. But there came to be the recognition that we can teach and we can baptize, but then when people get out and come to one of our churches, we don't know what to do with them, and we don't know what they need. And so in the last number of years, TPOM has been more focused on reentry services and really trying to help people and try to hang on to the gains that happen behind the bars and help people make that transition into the community. And we'll talk later about some of the essential services that help increase the chances for success. But that's sort of our focus these days.
Yeah, in some ways, I guess the evangelism piece, convincing somebody in that kind of situation that they need Jesus is part of the easy part.
Yeah.
But then it's when they make that transition. And a couple of weeks ago, our group will recall that we had a fellow here from Decatur, Alabama, who runs a drug and alcohol rehabilitation facility. And he mentioned the very same thing. It's one thing to get those folks sober, but it's another thing then to put them back into the, quote, real world and transition them into our congregations and so forth. And you're right, we don't know what to do with those folks sometimes. That's good. So I know you brought some slides, and maybe you want to kind of walk us through some of those. I know one of the early slides here is about sort of your biblical foundation. That's very important for any ministry. What passages of Scripture really identify and shape and direct your ministry?
Yeah, let me come to that at the second slide. And while I'm thinking about it, this slide was to remind me to talk a little bit about how we're organized. We've got a small staff in Nashville, but mainly we are coaching a network of volunteers across the state. So at one time, pre-COVID, we had about 500 volunteers. We've sort of been on a rebuilding program the last year or so, and we've got a couple hundred or more that are back engaged in prison ministry in various locations. But here's an example of how our networking can help preserve some of the good that is accomplished in local situations. I was at a minister's meeting. I visited with a man who is very active in the Stewart County Jail. He teaches classes there. He does individual Bible studies. He's baptized a number of people. But while we were talking, he said, I've got two guys that have been transferred out of the county jail, and they were sent to the Northeast Correctional Facility. Well, that's nearly to Virginia. That's up there, Mountain City. And I was able to say, hey, give me their details. Some of our best volunteers work in Northeast. And so he sent me those names and their ID number. And I communicated with our volunteers that are over there, and they were able to report, hey, we've already seen one of these guys, and he was at Worship Sunday, and we'll look for the other guy that has just arrived. So that kind of networking is important, and we do a lot of training of volunteers, but we keep in touch with people that are in this kind of ministry, and sometimes we can tell them somebody that's in their facility. Sometimes they can send us some of their best people that they've been working with for a while and are serious about a reentry program. They come to us. They're with us for 4 to 6 months. And we love getting those kinds of recommendations. People that have already, perhaps in many cases, already been baptized behind the bars have been maybe working with mentors for 2-3 years, and they have the best chance of making that transition when they come out. So that's sort of the way that we're organized. So without volunteers, we wouldn't be able to do as much good as we do. But we've got a core of staff that know what they're doing and can train and help. So thinking about where this kind of ministry is based, think about how Jesus summarized what His ministry was going to be about. And I just think of some of those key phrases in this Luke 4 passage as Jesus first got up in the synagogue and connected what He was doing to what Isaiah had talked about. And man, you hear this to give liberty to captives in a little bit different light if you're involved in this kind of ministry. And of course, I know that process is broader than that. And one of the humbling things about being involved in this kind of ministry is you realize, hey, we're all captives, to sin. And we need the liberty that Jesus can provide. They made a certain mistake, and it's sort of obvious because they're behind bars, but we're in the same situation, and God has a solution for people that are enslaved to sin. So I think it's so connected to what Jesus came to do, and I get to preach once a month to our residents. So up to 16 men, up to 16 women there at the reentry center. And it's the favorite place I love to preach, because you just feel like this makes the gospel real. These people know they need what the gospel offers, and they're eager to go a different direction. So it's fun to be able to preach the gospel in that environment. And for volunteers, I tell folks that may be intimidated about getting behind the bars, I said, when you go in and you sit down and you're talking to somebody, those bars just sort of fall away, and it's just one person talking to another person about the most important things, And so I just feel like it's such a great spiritual growth opportunity for both the person who's incarcerated or coming out of incarceration, and especially for Christians that need a reminder. Maybe you're fortunate like me and grew up in a Christian home and maybe didn't make some of the mistakes that some of these folks made, but this makes it real. It's just a reminder that, hey, this is life-changing.
Yeah, I guess we're going to talk about some of your success stories from the prison ministry, but I would also love to hear some of those sort of revitalization stories from some of your volunteers. That would be encouraging as well, because there's a blessing that comes in helping others, not just the blessing of the help that we give, but then the bounce back blessing that we receive. Absolutely.
Right. We train a lot of mentors. We try to have a one-to-one mentor relationship with everybody that comes through our program, in addition to some that are mentoring behind the bars. But without fail, the mentors always say, man, I learned so much from them, learned so much from a mentee. And again, I think it's that reality of they've experienced some of that life transformation power of the gospel, and it makes you reflect and appreciate what we have in Jesus. So that's a very strong theme that we hear.
So Tommy, tell us a little bit about, I know you have several slides on this.
No problem.
About what it is you guys offer and what you're doing.
All right. As we think about what does it take to help someone be successful, and so we think about reentry services, and we can sort of group them maybe under 4 categories. So Some of you that may be familiar with social work may be familiar with the term case management. And so we've got a couple of people on staff that are case managers. And what they do is take each individual and figure out for them what services they need and how to take the next step forward. And one of the things we see over and over is people come, they've been released from prison. Can you imagine what it's like if you've been incarcerated for 10 years, 15 years? How many things have changed since then, you know? How many of us really were into our personal computer 15 years ago? You know, it's maybe 15, but 20 years ago, maybe not so many, you know. But now they come out and most businesses don't even have paper applications anymore. You do it all online, you know. So case managers help with those details. Okay, here's how to apply for a job. Here's how to get the computer going, you know. One of the things we do is issue a Chromebook to each person in the program. So they can use that for those online applications. They can use it for online training that they may need, certain areas and that kind of thing. And but case management can be anything from, hey, I don't have any idea where my birth certificate is, you know, well, what state were you born in? We'll help you get that. Driver's license restoration, food stamps in some cases, or, hey, I just need a few things from the pantry until I get my first paycheck, you know. And we're sort of trying to replenish our food pantry at the moment, you know, because for that first couple of weeks, we've got to have a bridge until people are working and get that first paycheck. Once they're getting an income, we expect them to pay rent and to start cultivating those habits of being a responsible citizen, buying their own food, cooking their own food, all of that. But case management is what steps come next and how do you solve that problem. And I might just mention Risha, that's pictured here, came about a year ago, and she went to Lipscomb and got a bachelor in social work. And she said, the reason I did that, I saw social work as a way to be the hands and feet of Jesus. So we love to have people on the staff that have that kind of attitude. And so she takes care of those details, but while she's doing it in a faith-building way, in a spiritual service way. So we love that. Another area that's very important is workforce development. And Fred in the blue shirt there, his full-time job is workforce development for a government agency. But for us, he's sort of part-time, but very dedicated. He'll meet with our people at night or on the weekend whenever they can be available. And he just knows everything about workforce. He helps them find training. He keeps connections with companies all over the Middle Tennessee area. He finds companies that are friendly to giving convicted felons a chance, you know. And so it's really, he does a great service for us. And of course, learning how to work and be a good employee is so vital to making that constructive turn coming back into the community. So, you know, we've had employers like Lee Company that does residential and commercial maintenance kind of thing. They've been an important partner. One of our graduates from about 5 years back is now a plumbing supervisor with them. And we've sent a number of people to them to get good jobs career type jobs. They'll train you to be a plumber, they'll train you to be an electrician, and so these are people that will be able to support themselves and do very well in the community. So we're excited to find employers like that. We were a little bit worried. About a year and a half ago, we opened the Women's Transition House, and we were afraid that women that had been incarcerated probably would just be able to get service jobs or things of that nature that probably didn't pay enough to really be self-supporting. But it hasn't worked out that way. Fred has worked with the women as well as the men, finds out any kind of talents they have, any kind of background or a willingness to be trained, and then he slots them in where they can do well. So 3 of the women have worked at a cabinet maker's company and love it and are doing a good job, and the cabinet maker's happy to have these employees that want to be there. It is helpful to be in a red-hot job market around Nashville, because employers are looking for workers. We've had others. I was trying to think of another example of there's another woman that, while she was incarcerated, trained as a carpenter, and she now has a job as a finished carpenter for a company that builds displays for museums and commercial settings like that. So workforce development's very important, and we usually have people working within 10 days of their arrival. So just imagine you've come out of incarceration. Maybe if you've been at 1 or 2 of the facilities, you've had a decent workforce experience, but in many cases not. And yet in 10 days, you're working somewhere. It may just be day labor to get those first dollars, but before long, Fred is moving people into good paying jobs as they show reliability. Another area, mental health services. And TPOM is certified with the state as a certified mental health care provider. We have a full-time Christian counselor on our staff, and he supervises some master's level interns, counseling interns from area universities, and so they provide some excellent services for all the residents in our program. And one of the women just recently told me that the counseling really helped her because it gave her some alternative ways to manage her emotions. So, anger management is a skill that most were lacking, that got them in trouble. Impulsive, did something in the heat of the moment, but learning how to head that off and manage that allows them to keep from making some mistakes and keep heading in a good direction. In addition to the formal mental health care, we do have AANA that meets every week on our facility, and of course the mentoring program is a part of that process as well.
Yeah, let me pause there.
Yeah.
I know that in terms of incarceration, the numbers are staggering of how many people that are incarcerated committed the crimes that they've committed while under the influence of drugs or alcohol. I don't know exactly what those are. I've heard tremendously high numbers.
I think it's about 80%.
Yeah.
And so for any kind of reentry program, you've got to address drug and alcohol abuse. Right. And so having a support program, helping people, and sometimes if they need an extra meeting, they can find that as well. But you've got to be realistic about that challenge that's there. And sometimes we have people that relapse, and we have to be pretty close to a zero tolerance policy for the sake of everybody else that's in the program. But we have developed a relationship with one of the rehab centers that we can send people. If they're trying and they just messed up, they can go into the rehab program for 30 days. We'll give them a second chance if they do well in that program. So that's all a part of the process. Just putting all those pieces together needs to happen. Mentoring, hey, there's a familiar face.
Yeah, I was about to say, who's the guy in the blue shirt?
That's right. It's to me, it was one of the most enjoyable parts of coming to do this work, of just figuring out how to be a mentor, and it's mostly walking alongside somebody in their whole experience. So it may be that you do a Bible study. It may be that you talk about a bad day at work and how to respond to that situation in a constructive way. It could be any number of things, but just having a one-on-one relationship with somebody that's going to be a friend, that's going to walk through it with you. I often will take folks I'm working with to eat and do our mentoring there, and just a part of the process of breaking bread and getting to know each other and talk about what's important in their lives or what's the current struggle. One other category. No, that was it. Okay, so.
Yeah, so why don't you tell us a little bit about your transitional program? What I guess, and I mentioned this earlier, and I guess it's a little bit of a slang term or whatever, but the idea of a halfway house was what you're talking about here. But,
right.
Tell us about that.
Well, since 2015, we've had a transitional house for men, and it's a duplex, so 8 on each side, and we have house shepherds. In many cases, people that have been through our program successfully, and they have regular jobs, but they're there in the evenings, and they're coaches for those that are in the house, and do a little bit of supervision, but mainly there to answer questions and reinforce policies and that kind of thing. So to have a safe, drug-free, alcohol-free environment for the 4 to 6 months that they're in the program is a very important piece to help them be successful. So you can see the men's house. It's a nice facility, and got a little patio out back and that kind of thing. There's 2 to a bedroom, 4 share a common bath area, but just a way to give a step toward living in the community again and figuring out the responsibilities. So like I mentioned, they'll pay rent. They have a curfew. We have phases, so as someone moves through successfully, they get a little more freedom, and that seems to work well.
And this facility is located in Nashville?
It's in Nashville. If you happen to know the exits, the last exit coming up I-65 is Wedgwood. So you turn on Wedgwood, head toward the fairgrounds, and the intersecting road is Raines Avenue, and that's where we're located. Okay. These days, if you look to the right, you can see the top of the soccer stadium that's in Nashville. So be sure and reserve your parking place when you come to T-Palm on game day, Yeah. Everybody's looking for a corner to park in. But that's where we're located, and both the men's transition house and women's transition house are there in that area near the reentry center. So the women's house, let's see. This is the women's house that opened about 1.5 years ago, and again, you can see it's a very nice facility, but it was built to last, and I think it'll serve us well for a long time. The interior's very nice as well. The women all comment on it was so much better than they were expecting. It's not a rundown house that's been turned into a halfway house. it's a nice place, and it's a first step. The basement of that facility is a exercise area, recreation room, and that kind of thing. So a lot of pieces come together in trying to provide everything to help people return to God, family, and community.
And you mentioned that, or in some of the literature here, that you started some work in Memphis as well, right? What's going
That's
on
true.
there?
We're excited that we can serve men in Memphis now. We've got a small house with 6 beds, and the Faith Works nonprofit that's in Memphis that started at the Highland Avenue Church of Christ. They own the facilities. It's been donated to them. We're managing that facility for them since we have the experience. And they are raising funds to build a new 20-bed facility. So that'll really help us to serve West Tennessee in a much better way. So we're excited about that, and all of it's a part of the process, helping people, get back to their community.
So, as far as process goes, you have a reentry center that people coming out of incarceration will go to first, and then to these transitional houses. Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, the reentry center is where the training happens. So it's in a building between these 2 houses.
Okay.
So the program itself runs 4 to 6 months.
Okay.
So if somebody does real well and makes good progress in their work, and they can be self-supporting at the end of 4 months, then they can graduate once they've met all the conditions. Most people probably need at least 5 months, and they can stay as long as 6 to get up to a level of financial security and that kind of thing. And just moving up in their phases, meeting all the benchmarks.
And among the various services you offer, do you help them manage those finances? Do you give them training about managing finances? I know that's a lot of the reason that a lot of people get involved in crimes that wind up being incarcerated, because they haven't learned how to manage finances.
We do have a rotating curriculum of classes. So they have AANA on Monday night, and there's at least one other night each week where there are classes, and sometimes 2 other nights. And so financial management is one of them that's very important. Seeking Safety is a peer-reviewed curriculum for living your life in a way that keeps you out of dangerous situations. So especially thinking of the women in particular, but classes like that. And I'll just mention, while we're on that topic, the safe housing is especially valuable for the women, because when they come out, if they don't have safe housing, they often will be back into abusive situations with a man or with family even that was not healthy. And so it's very important to have good, safe housing as people re-enter the community. And there is a test. Some of you have probably heard of ACEs, of Adverse Childhood Experiences. And there's a little 10-question test that you ask people to just get an idea of what kind of neglect, abuse, traumatic experiences have they had in their lives. And typically for the men, you may have 2 or 3 that they'll mention. For the women, it's often 8 or 9 of these traumatic experiences. And so it's extremely important that the housing part, and then learning the skills to keep yourself safe and out of compromising situations, all of that is very important.
I know you had at least one more slide there that you wanted to share with us. Yeah.
At the end of 4 to 6 months, when a person's met the criteria, we make a big deal about graduation. This is a marker. It may be something they've never experienced before, but they're going to get a certificate. They're going to get a $100 gift card as they leave the program, and we're going to cheer them, and we have a routine that we go through, and there's a scripture reading or inspirational reading, a prayer over them, and a commitment to keep up with them after they leave the program. But that's a fun thing to experience. And then I know that you were interested in hearing some stories.
Absolutely, yeah. Tell us about some of your successes. I mean, obviously we know about tons of failures, but tell us about some of those success stories.
And I will say that in this kind of ministry, you're working with an at-risk population. So you have people that just aren't ready to pay the price to follow the rules and be in the program. We try to interview, and there's an application process, and we do our best to be good stewards of the resources that we have, and we try to find people that are most willing. We thoroughly we thoroughly explain the program to them up front. It's a faith-based program. There are going to be some requirements for you to participate in this. And sometimes somebody will come and, oh, you really meant that, huh? And that's not where they want to be, So there's that, and there's the risk of reverting back to alcohol or drug abuse. So those are challenges. But, the successes. It's what keeps you going. And to see a life that is salvaged, a life that is restored. And so let me tell you about this man, Murphy. That's his last name, but everybody calls him Murphy. And he was in the maximum security prison north of Nashville, River Bend. While he was there, he encountered some of our long-term mentors, and he responded to their leadership. And Murphy had the same mentor for 3 years, but he did everything that he needed to do. He gradually recovered his childhood faith. And as I talked to him about it, he said, I didn't want anybody to ram it down my throat. I didn't want anybody to push me, So even in his situation, he's saying, I want it to be my choice. I don't want anybody to try to manipulate me or force me or take advantage of me. But he had great mentors. They were patient with him. He restored his faith with God's help. And he became a leader, a spiritual leader behind the bars. And then when he came to TPOM, he just was a model participant in the program. He had been one of the main maintenance guys at River Bend. And so when he got out, he got a maintenance job with a company that manages 36 of the Middle Tennessee McDonald's. And so he can just do anything with his hands. And he's all over Middle Tennessee now, keeping the burgers going and all of that. But he's just a great man who's rebuilt his life. When he finished the program, we asked him to stay on as a house shepherd, and he did that for about 1.5 years. And he now lives with his sister near Gallatin. She was building a new house, and she built a house where he could be incorporated into the household, and he's just doing great. And he will come back at least once a month on Sunday nights to encourage people that are currently in the program. And every Sunday morning, he's at the North Side Church of Christ on the north side of Nashville. So he's just put his life together in a very wonderful way. And people would be surprised to learn that at one time, Murphy was on death row. And so his life has been salvaged in a true and profound way. And we're so glad that he's made that progress.
And maybe this leads to kind of a bigger question that we might need to consider as Americans and members of churches. What is something that we need to know? You've been working with folks that come out of the prison system for 5 years, volunteered some before that. You're part of a ministry that's been doing this for some time. What is something we need to know about the prison system or about folks who are incarcerated that I think is important to communicate?
You know, I've started asking, we try to tell somebody's story, maybe one woman, one man's resident, a story of their experience in our newsletter. And I've started asking these folks the question, what do you think people need to understand about incarceration? And I've been learning stuff, you know, and the woman we saw a moment ago that at her graduation, her answer to me was, people probably can't understand the loneliness that an incarcerated person experiences. That you're locked up with all these people, but you're alone. You're on your own. And she got some of the correspondence that some of our folks send in. And her comment was, you can't imagine what it meant to know that somebody cared about your welfare, you know. And so the smallest steps that you can take to communicate with this population that you care and that you hope for their future is very important. You know, certainly incarceration has to be there for people that have violent tendencies, that are unreformed, that don't learn things the easy way, you know. But so many people make one mistake, you know, in a heated moment, or they get trapped in drugs. So many of the people that are incarcerated come out of that kind of situation. And so for those people, there's not a whole big change of thinking that has to take place. It's a recognition, I made a mistake, I've got to pay the price, but I never want to be back here again. You can work with people like that, you know. You can give them hope, and you can give them life skills and prepare them to be successful when they come back into the community.
That is good. I know that you have a display out in the foyer, and we encourage people to go by there. You have a lot of material there. I was fascinated to hear that you have mentors, a couple of hundred around the state, and have had as many as 500, some in Northeast Tennessee. My question is, do you have any in the Chattanooga area? Do you have any volunteer mentors that work in this particular area? And if not, what would we need to do if someone out there is interested? What would they need to do to maybe be one of those people? Because I know we have people that come back into Chattanooga from some of the state facilities as well.
That's really an excellent question, and I have an answer.
I thought you might.
You know, recently we've had at least 3 women come to us from the Next Door CRC project. So I wrote down what CRC stands for. Do you remember that? Know that? Correctional Release Center. And so it's a part of the Next Door nonprofit. They focus on serving women. They help them get jobs. And so we've had 3 women come to our program. So they've been working, but they have to be back at night in this program in Chattanooga. But then they can come to us. We can take them to another level with their work, and we'll provide housing while they're doing our program. But what could happen is, and I asked our volunteer coordinator, she said, at the Next Door, they would love to have some volunteers that could be mentors for the people that they're working with. So, I think primarily it would be women mentors for this particular population. But, that would be a connection that, might eventually send people to our program. But it's a great way to serve locally. And, one of the things that we do at times, as it can be scheduled, is take a couple of our staff and do volunteer trainings. So, if there was enough interest and said, hey, that sounds like something we want to try, we could send a couple of trainers. They would do a 4-hour training for volunteers and mentors, and just sort of orient you to working with this population. So it's a top quality training. We have the basic level, and then when you do that, if you want more, there's an advanced training for mentors that we offer as well. So that would be a way to get involved and do something local. There may be local jail opportunities. I don't think we have anybody that we know of in Hamilton County, but man, we'd love to have some more involvement in this direction.
Good. Absolutely.
Well, we're getting close to the end of our time. Is there a question that anybody else has that you'd like to have answered tonight, or something that's come up in the discussion? Raise your hand up. Yes.
Yes, Sandy. AA and NA is what the question was about.
Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous. So, since we have people that are dealing with either alcohol or drugs, that's why we refer to it that way.
Yes, Josh.
Is the rising cost of living in Nashville having a negative impact on ability to reentry?
Yeah, Josh, and I will repeat this for the benefit of those who may not have heard. The rising cost of living in Nashville, what kind of impact is that having on your program overall?
The first thing is housing. It's just getting unaffordable, and it was before this latest inflation blast, so this hasn't helped at all. Really hard for that next step. So they come out of our program, we've been charging a reasonable rent, but now they have to compete on the open market, and that is one of the biggest challenges. Certainly, the economic uncertainty has impacted our fundraising and things, so that's an effect as well. We've been able to provide jobs that generally have been good enough for our residents to provide for their needs. That's probably getting a little tighter, but a number of the jobs are really good jobs, and the employers are raising their pay rates to keep employees, so that's offsetting it somewhat.
Good question.
And go ahead.
Is there any training for families for with Murphy, how he went back to live with his sister, to be able to deal with the difference?
Yeah, family training is what he's talking about. As far as reincorporating transitioning folks there.
As part of our counseling program, sometimes we'll be working on family reunification. So yes, we've got people that can help families sort of manage that transition. Yeah, it's a good question. I haven't really mentioned yet, but we do have some volunteers that work in juvenile facilities around Nashville. they're motivated by, hey, if we can get these folks back on track, maybe they won't be incarcerated in future life, you know. And the other thing that we have is ministering to children of the incarcerated. So in the summer we have a camp. It's at a great facility on Old Hickory Lake near Gallatin. Volunteers run the camp. Everyone that comes to the camp has an incarcerated parent. And so we've got counselors there with some experience to talk to them about life. And they have all the fun experiences of a summer camp, a church camp, you know, with canoes and athletics and devotionals and Bible study and all of that. But we've got some of our counseling team that'll come up and give the kids a chance to talk about home and about their lives and special challenges.
Yeah, and you mentioned fundraising. One of the things we always like to do is give people an opportunity to give if they want to. So what would someone need to do if they wanted to make a donation to help Tennessee Prison Outreach Ministry?
So you can really do everything at our website. So it's tnprisonministry.org. And if you get there, then there are links to our events, links to sign up to volunteer. There's an online form you can fill out, and we'll work with you to find a volunteer slot, including at CRC. And then there's a tab for donating online. So, you know, we are involved in keeping this ministry going, and we've got some major donors that help us in big ways. When we were trying to build a women's house, you know, that was important. But we've got a lot of people that just do a little bit monthly, but it all adds up, you know. So one thing in particular, we can think about that first $500. So when someone comes out of prison and they have nothing in most cases, many of them have burned bridges with family, so they don't have any family support. So we're looking for $500 that pays the first couple weeks of rent and gets them some basic food items and gets them going until they get that first check. So that's a neat thing to say, hey, I think I'm gonna do $500 that'll help one person get started on the program, you know. But we have all kinds of donations, so just go to the website and there will be instructions there, and you can decide if you want to participate. The materials in the back, there are some that are entitled Transition to Success. That gives a nice summary of the reentry program, and this is what we take inside prisons to talk to people that are getting ready to come out, of what we offer. We've got a brochure about the youth program and the summer camp, and then the other brochure is a volunteer brochure with all the many ways that you can help. So if you can't find something local to do in person, you could be a correspondence person and send new life behavior courses that are Christian-based and teach someone that way from your home. So there are a lot of different ways to get involved.
Tommy, we want to thank you for being here tonight. Let's thank Tommy for stepping in. Stepping in for the director to speak to us, and we're grateful for that. Steve's got some announcements he's going to share, and then we'll have a prayer, and the night will be yours.
Yeah, thank you, Tommy, for being here. And indulge us for just a moment while I share some news. On our sick list, Maggie Crownover remains at Life Care Center of Hickson, room 213. Benny Gallagher is receiving treatment at home for cancer. So please keep him in your prayers. He does not need visitors, but he does. He would appreciate any cards. And I know Benny and Elsie have been involved in our card ministry. Just curious, how many of y'all have received a card from Benny and Elsie Gallagher? Isn't that something? That's amazing. I need to raise my hand a bunch of times because I've received multiple cards from them. And she still does it, absolutely. Yeah, she's still going at it. So she sends 80 to 100 a week. How about that? Well, let's let them know how much we appreciate them and love them, and so drop them a card. Their address is on our website. If you can't find it, then call us and we'll give you the address and so forth. But keep them in your prayers. Ginger Jordan is now at home. She had a little episode over the weekend. We're glad to report she's back at home. And Spencer Smith is still at Society Daisy Healthcare Room 220. We mentioned Sunday about the passing of Ralph Whitmire early Sunday morning. His funeral is going to be tomorrow at 11 o'clock at the North Chapel of the Chattanooga Funeral Home. It'd be good for those of us that can to go and support that family. Of course, Ralph's a recent convert, and his family would need the encouragement. There's visitation tonight at the North Chapel of Chattanooga Funeral Home until 8 o'clock. So we don't want you to rush away necessarily, but if you have time to go by there before you go home, that would be encouraging as well. We need to mention, especially this coming Saturday, is Desserts with Dads. So that's dads or granddads. So anybody that hasn't signed up and you want to do that, please go to the website and do that this evening so that they can plan on a final number for Saturday, and all the information is there at the website. Remember the men's ministry outing at the Braves game on September the 3rd. There's information online about that. We're having a special prayer night by Zoom on September 6th. That's a Tuesday evening at 7 o'clock. And all the information about how to log on will be on our website and also will be in the bulletin this weekend. Our theme is going to be from Acts 4:23 through 33. We're going to pray for boldness to share the gospel. So let's be thinking about that. We have our special marriage night with a very special guest, celebrity guest, on Saturday evening, September the 10th. Information about that's on the website. Check out the online devotional from Acts 10 today. Next week we'll look at Acts 11, so be reading along with us as we do that. And I believe that that's all that I have. So any other announcements that need to be made? Yes, Carl, we actually got a call today from Martin Boyd Home, and Carl is going to coordinate the Sunday afternoon worship services in September for Martin Boyd Home. So that means not this coming Sunday, but Sunday, a week from Sunday, we'll need somebody to plan to go out there on Sunday afternoon and help conduct that worship service for those folks that aren't able to get out. And we'll have a sign-up list in the classrooms this coming Sunday. But if you think about especially that first week, it may be hard to plug everybody in. So if you can help, especially that first Sunday, then please see Carl. He'd probably go ahead and line you up tonight if you're willing. So yes, thank you for that reminder. Anything else? That's correct. If you can help a lady move from one facility on the first floor to another Sunday afternoon, one of our Man of Monday friends needs some help Saturday afternoon, and that information's at the office as well. Hopefully it wouldn't take too awfully long, but if you could have some muscle power and manpower to do that Saturday afternoon, that would be a blessing as well. Anything else that I overlooked? All right. Tommy, you want to lead us in a dismissal prayer? Thank you.
Dear God, thank you for tonight, for our opportunity to hear about what's going on as Christians are using their talents and abilities and their heart to help those who are coming out of incarceration to find footing and to succeed and to be a bridge to services. And Father, we know that's a demonstration of love, and we ask you to soften our hearts for opportunities like this and others. We can be involved in other people's lives and help them along the way as others have helped us. And Father, we ask you bless Tommy Gore and the Tennessee Prison Outreach Ministry and everything that they're doing. And Father, that you bless those who are currently in these homes and are making these positive steps, that they'll continue to make progress as you bless them. Father, go with us tonight as we go home and rest and rise to face a new day tomorrow. In Jesus' name we pray.